Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where everything seemed fine, yet something just didn't feel right? You laughed, talked, shared moments, but when intimacy approached, or when you tried to connect on a deeper emotional level, there was a barrier, a subtle wall. You couldn't quite explain it, but your intuition whispered something was off. You're not alone. In today's world of instant gratification, where dating apps turn relationships into swipes and ghosting, is more common than goodbyes. Understanding someone's past and how it shapes your present together is not paranoia, it's wisdom. This video is not about judgment. It's not about shaming anyone for their past. Instead, it's a Stoic-inspired guide to recognizing the subtle signs that your partner may have a different relationship history than you expected, and whether or not that matters to your emotional health and long-term happiness. Why is this important? Because investing your heart is like investing capital. If you overlook red flags, you don't just lose time, you lose yourself. And the goal here is not to fear someone's history, but to understand its impact on your present connection. We're going to explore 10 psychological, behavioral, and emotional signs that may indicate a woman has had a high number of past partners, and more importantly, how those experiences might be shaping her emotional availability today. Each sign will be unpacked not just with logic, but with examples, insights from behavioral psychology, and reflections from Stoic thinkers like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. But before we dive in, a small request. If you believe in taking ownership of your relationships, protecting your peace, and understanding the human mind, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. This video may be uncomfortable, but it just might change how you approach love forever. Let's get started with the first sign. She's too comfortable with physical intimacy. Too fast. Let's be honest. First encounters are usually awkward. There's a natural tension, a dance between curiosity and hesitation, especially when it comes to physical connection. But once in a while you meet someone who doesn't hesitate at all. The moment you touch her hand, it's like she's read the script already. The kiss comes too easily. The way she moves, touches, and responds, it's confident, even polished. And that confidence, it can either be thrilling or disorienting. You start asking yourself, is she just incredibly in tune with her sensuality? Or is this a well-rehearsed performance shaped by many past encounters? Now let's pause right here. This is not about shaming confidence or condemning someone's sexual agency. A woman's comfort with her body isn't inherently a red flag. In fact, many emotionally healthy women are expressive, warm, and open without it meaning anything deeper. But as Stoics taught, judge not by impressions but by patterns. So the key here is context and consistency. Does her behavior match her words? Does she talk about valuing emotional connection, yet skip right to the physical? Does she show depth in conversation or only intensity in touch? You see, there's a critical difference between a woman who is physically expressive because she feels a connection and one who uses physicality as a substitute for emotional bonding. Take John, a 33-year-old startup founder living in Austin. He met a beautiful woman at a networking event. They hit it off. Within hours, she invited him back to her place. What was supposed to be a coffee turned into a night of passion. At first, John was euphoric, but days later he started noticing a pattern. She rarely asked questions about his life, never texted first, and anytime they met, things escalated physically but never emotionally. It wasn't about the number of people she'd been with, it was about her emotional absence. John wasn't being valued, he was being used for dopamine. It took him weeks to realize she wasn't interested in a relationship. She was chasing sensation, and she was good at it. Psychological insight. In psychology, this is often tied to attachment styles. People with avoidant attachment often replace emotional closeness with physical intimacy because physical contact is less risky than emotional vulnerability. They've been hurt, ghosted, rejected, so they learn to touch without trusting, to kiss without caring. You'll feel it, not immediately, but slowly. There will be a sense that something's missing, even as things seem hot on the surface. So what should you do? Observe. Slow down. Don't confuse passion with connection. Stoicism teaches us to live according to nature, and that includes respecting the pace of genuine emotional unfolding. If you're always the one wondering what she's really feeling, chances are she isn't showing it. It doesn't mean she's a bad person, but it does mean she may not be ready for the kind of connection you're seeking. Remember, intimacy without emotional presence is like wine without a vessel. It spills everywhere, makes a mess, and leaves you with a headache. Let's move to the second sign, one that's often harder to recognize but even more damaging: long-term emotional disconnection, even when you're physically close. There's a strange kind of silence that can exist between two people. It's not the peaceful silence of comfort, it's the heavy silence of emotional distance. You felt it before. You're sitting next to someone who's smiling at you, laughing at your jokes, responding to your words. But somehow their presence feels hollow, like the body is here but the spirit is elsewhere. You try to connect. You ask about her past, her dreams, her fears. She gives short answers, changes the subject, tells a joke, plays with her phone. You tell yourself she just needs time, that she's shy or guarded or private. But as time goes on, that emotional wall doesn't come down, it thickens. This isn't rare. In fact, in the modern dating world, it's becoming more and more common. People are exhausted, they've been burned, ghosted, cheated on, or discarded. So what do? They adapt. They stop letting others in. They learn to give just enough to keep things going, but never enough to be vulnerable. They become performers of affection rather than participants in intimacy. If a woman has had multiple shallow relationships in the past, ones built on excitement rather than emotional substance, she may have unintentionally trained herself to disconnect. For her love is physical. Closeness is momentary. Real connection. That's a risk she may no longer be willing to take. And here's where it becomes tricky for you, because everything on the surface seems fine. She shows up, she laughs, she sleeps next to you, but something essential is missing. She never truly lets you in. You don't feel known, you don't feel held, you feel tolerated but not truly chosen. It shows in the small things. She never asks follow-up questions when you talk about your day. She forgets the names of people you've mentioned. She seems interested in your company but not your essence. You might be physically intimate, but there's no emotional afterglow, no softness, no deepening bond. And the most dangerous part, you start to doubt your own perception. You tell yourself you're asking for too much, that real love takes time, that she's just not a words person. But deep down your intuition is speaking. It's telling you this isn't emotional closeness, this is proximity without presence. So what do? You pause. You step back emotionally just enough to observe without attachment. Ask yourself, when I open up to her, does she meet me there or does she retreat? When I show vulnerability, does she reciprocate or deflect? Are my needs for connection being honored or politely ignored? This has nothing to do with judging her past. It has everything to do with how the past has shaped her capacity for present-day connection. If someone has lived most of their romantic life on the surface, diving deeper may not come naturally. Or worse, it may feel threatening. You are not here to fix her. You are not here to prove your worth until she decides to open up. What you are here to do is honor your own emotional truth. If you are someone who values depth, intimacy, shared vulnerability, and emotional bonding, then you must choose a partner who can meet you there. There's a quote from Marcus Aurelius: "Be tolerant with others, but strict with yourself." It applies here more than ever. You can empathize with her wounds. You can understand her defenses. But you must also be honest about what you need. Emotional intimacy isn't a luxury. It's the foundation of any real partnership. If your relationship feels like you're giving love into a void, hoping it eventually echoes back, that is not a connection. That is emotional exile. And let's be real, even the most physically passionate relationship will collapse under the weight of emotional starvation. No amount of kissing, touching, or sleeping together can replace the feeling of being seen, heard, and known. So check in with yourself. Are you bonded, or are you just attached to the idea of who she could be if only she opened up? Some people simply aren't ready, and that's okay. But if you stay too long waiting for them to change, you'll start changing, and not in a good way. You'll shrink. You'll doubt your needs. You'll normalize distance. And worst of all, you'll stop asking for more. Don't do that. You deserve presence. You deserve closeness. You deserve a partner who's not just in the room with you, but in the relationship with you fully. And if that's not what you're getting, it's time to face that reality, not fight it. Sometimes what people say about their past doesn't matter as much as how they say it and whether they say it the same way twice. You're having dinner. The topic of exes comes up. Casually, she mentions a long-term relationship that ended badly. You ask a few polite follow-ups. She tells a story that sounds reasonable, even a little rehearsed. Nothing alarming. But a few weeks later, during a late-night conversation, the same relationship comes up again. This time, the timeline is different. The reason for the breakup has changed. She leaves out details she emphasized before or adds new ones that don't fit the first version. At first you shrug it off. Everyone remembers things differently. Memory is flawed. But then it happens again and again. Stories shift, explanations contradict, people, places, and motivations blur. And suddenly, a picture starts to form. Her past isn't just vague, it's inconsistent. And inconsistency breeds distrust. Now don't misunderstand, this isn't about interrogating someone like a detective. It's about pattern recognition. And if her past seems like a moving target, you need to ask yourself why. Because people who've had a long series of short-lived, emotionally unanchored relationships often learn to edit their past. Not necessarily out of malice, but out of survival, shame, fear of judgment, or even simple emotional fatigue. They've told the story too many times, to too many people, so the version you get may not be the truth, it's the version that gets the least reaction. Inconsistency in personal stories can be a defense mechanism, but it can also be a red flag, especially when the inconsistencies touch on key values like trust, commitment, and emotional availability. Here's a practical example. Let's say she once tells you she hasn't had any serious relationship in the last 5 years, she was focused on work. But then a month later, she casually mentions someone she dated for nearly 2 years just 2 years ago. When you gently bring it up, she brushes it off, says it didn't really count, it wasn't serious. But what does serious mean? You start to realize she redefines terms based on what's convenient, and that makes it hard for you to trust anything she says about the past or the future. Relationships need some degree of narrative clarity, not perfection, not confession, but clarity. If someone's past is so murky that you're always second-guessing it, that anxiety will bleed into your present. You'll begin to filter every interaction through doubt. This creates what psychologists call invisible tension. You can't put your finger on it, but you're always a little off balance, a little uncertain, and emotional safety becomes impossible. So how do you respond? First, stay calm. Accusation never builds trust, but curiosity can. If something doesn't add up, ask for clarification without making her feel cornered. Hey, I remember you said X last time, but now it sounds like it was more like Y. Just curious which one's closer to what really happened. Her reaction will tell you everything. If she gets defensive, evasive, or turns it into a joke, that's information. If she takes a breath, clarifies, and appreciates your honesty, that's also information. Sometimes people contradict themselves because they're still figuring out their own truth. But sometimes it's because they don't want you to figure it out. The Stoics teach us to focus not on what others say, but on what they do. You're not listening just to her words, you're watching her patterns. Does she open up more over time or less? Do her stories start making more sense or less? Is your trust in her growing or slowly wearing thin? If the past keeps changing, the present becomes shaky and the future nearly impossible to build. Because if she can't own her own timeline, she might not be ready to co-create one with you. And you're not wrong for noticing that. You're not paranoid. You're being aware, and that awareness is what keeps you grounded in reality. There's nothing noble about building a relationship on doubt. You deserve clarity. You deserve emotional safety. You deserve to feel like you're building something on solid ground, not a shifting story. So if you find yourself constantly unsure about her past, constantly decoding inconsistencies, constantly rationalizing red flags, take a step back. Not to punish her, but to protect you. You don't need perfect transparency. But you do need honesty. And if someone isn't ready to give it, you must be ready to walk away. It starts small. She cancels dinner at the last minute. Something came up. No big deal. Then it happens again and again. Each time it's something different, a sudden meeting, a forgotten commitment, a vague excuse like not feeling well or things got a little hectic. You want to be understanding. Life is chaotic. People get overwhelmed. But eventually a pattern forms. A pattern that's not about emergencies, but about priorities. And this is where most men go wrong. They tell themselves they're overreacting. They make excuses for her. They downplay their own frustration. But deep down they feel it. They're not being prioritized. They're being postponed. Inconsistent commitment, especially when paired with unclear communication, is one of the clearest signs that something deeper is going on. Maybe she's not sure about the relationship. Maybe she's emotionally unavailable. Or maybe she's simply keeping her options open. Now let's be fair, not all cancellations are red flags. If someone's going through a rough time dealing with mental health struggles, family problems, or work chaos, they might genuinely need space. But how do you tell the difference between someone in a tough season and someone who's just not invested? You look at patterns. When someone values you, they don't disappear without explanation. If they have to cancel, they reschedule. If something gets in the way, they make it up to you. They don't go dark. They don't get vague. And they definitely don't make you feel like an optional plan. Consistency is a love language. When a person shows up for you, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's inconvenient, that's where trust is built. On the other hand, someone who frequently cancels with unclear reasons is communicating something too, just not with words. They're saying, this isn't a priority, I'm not ready. Or worse, you're a placeholder. One of the most uncomfortable truths is this: emotionally avoidant people often use inconsistency to create control. By keeping you off balance, they remain in charge of the dynamic. You never know what to expect, and that unpredictability makes you chase more than you should. It's a toxic loop. One minute she's sweet and present, the next she's unavailable and vague, and you start thinking, maybe if I try harder she'll stabilize. Maybe if I show more patience she'll appreciate me. But that's not how it works. You can't earn consistency from someone who's not interested in giving it. A man grounded in Stoic principles doesn't beg for time. He doesn't chase someone who sends mixed signals. He observes, he evaluates, and he withdraws when clarity is absent. Because he knows a relationship built on uncertainty will cost him peace, and peace is non-negotiable. Here's a practical test after 3 canceled plans without clear follow-up or sincere effort to reconnect. Stop initiating. Just stop. If she's interested, she'll notice your absence. She'll reach out. She'll offer an explanation, or at least an apology. If she doesn't, then you've got your answer. She wasn't invested, and your silence simply exposed the truth. There's a quote from Seneca: "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." Relationships work the same way. If the woman you're seeing doesn't know where she wants things to go, no amount of effort from you will steer the ship. You'll just drift in circles. So don't let charm fool you. Don't let temporary affection override long-term patterns. And don't let someone treat your time like it's disposable. You deserve someone who's excited to see you. Someone who looks forward to time together, not someone who treats every plan like a backup. And if that's not what you're getting, then the path is clear. Let go. Because the right person won't make you guess whether you matter. There's a subtle kind of insult that doesn't sound like an insult. It slips in through a compliment. You cook way better than my ex. You're actually the first guy who listens when I talk. My last boyfriend never made me feel safe the way you do. At first it flatters you. You feel chosen, special, better. But over time, something starts to feel off. Because these comparisons don't stop at the compliments. They evolve. Suddenly it's, my ex used to take me to places like that. He was really into that same kind of music. You remind me of him when you get angry. And then it hits you, you're not being loved for you. You're being measured against ghosts. Being compared to someone else, even indirectly, chips away at your identity in a relationship. It plants seeds of self-doubt. It makes you feel like you're in a competition you never agreed to join. And here's the uncomfortable truth. A woman who constantly brings up past partners, even in casual ways, may still be emotionally entangled with them. She may not be over her ex, or worse, she may be addicted to the emotional cycle those relationships created. Why does this happen? Because unresolved attachment lingers. Some people move on physically but not mentally. They leave the relationship but carry the comparisons. Every new partner becomes a mirror, a test, a replacement. And if she's had multiple partners in the past with little emotional closure, her mind may still be fragmented across all those experiences. She's not seeing you, she's seeing echoes of them in you. This doesn't always come from malice. Sometimes it's unconscious. She might not even realize how often she's referencing the past. But as Stoics would remind us, don't judge by intention, judge by impact. And the impact here is this: when you are consistently compared to others, you begin to lose your center. You try to be more impressive. You overthink your responses. You second-guess your instincts. You start playing a role instead of just being yourself. That's not love, that's auditioning. And the worst part, you'll never win. Because when someone lives in comparison mode, no one is ever enough. Not you, not the last guy, not the next. Because the issue isn't you, it's their inability to fully be present. In healthy relationships, there's no scoreboard. There's only discovery. It's not about who is better, it's about who is right now. So how do you handle this? You speak up. You say calmly but clearly, I don't feel comfortable being compared to your past relationships. I'd rather we focus on building something of our own. If she's mature and emotionally aware, she'll understand, she'll reflect, she'll make an effort. If she gets defensive, dismissive, or accuses you of being insecure, that's a problem. Because here's the thing, it's not insecurity to protect your individuality. It's self-respect. A woman who values you will never make you feel like you're in competition with her past. She'll honor your uniqueness. She'll see you with new eyes, and she won't weaponize memory as a form of subtle control. There's a powerful quote that says, when you compare, you forget to connect. Every moment spent looking back is a moment not invested in moving forward. And if someone is still dragging their emotional past into their present, they are not ready for a future, not with you, not with anyone. So ask yourself, am I being appreciated or am I being evaluated? Do I feel celebrated or do I feel ranked? Because the answers to those questions determine whether you're building intimacy or performing for approval. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not for how you stack up against someone who isn't even in the room anymore. And if that's not what's happening, it's okay to walk away. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Sign #6. She guards her phone like a secret agent. It's late. You're sitting beside her on the couch. She gets a message. Her body stiffens. She flips her phone face down. You pretend not to notice, but something in you stirs. Later that night, she goes to the kitchen with her phone. She takes a bit longer than expected. You hear her voice low, almost whispering, and suddenly you feel like a stranger in your own relationship. Here's the truth no one likes to admit: when someone protects their phone like it holds state secrets, something's off. Now let's be clear. Privacy and secrecy are not the same. Everyone deserves a private life, but secrecy, that's different. That's what happens when someone actively hides parts of their world from you, not because they need space, but because they fear exposure. If she's always on her phone but never when you're around, if she never lets her notifications be visible, if she clutches it like a lifeline even during a 5-minute bathroom break, you have to ask yourself, what's she afraid I'll see? And again, this is not about paranoia, it's about patterns. In relationships with emotional health, phones are neutral objects. They sit on the table unlocked, unguarded. There's no tension around them, no anxiety. Why? Because there's nothing to hide. But when someone has a past filled with fleeting connections, casual entanglements, or complicated situationships, secrecy becomes second nature. They learn to manage people like tabs in a browser, always open, always switching, never fully closed. If she still has lingering ties to exes, friends with benefits, or guys she swears are just friends, but only messages when you're not around, it's not insecurity to be uncomfortable with that. It's self-awareness. Because in a committed relationship, trust isn't just given, it's built through consistency. Let's talk about the psychology for a moment. People who constantly guard their phone are often engaged in parallel narratives, one with you, one outside of you. They compartmentalize their life to avoid emotional accountability. They like the idea of being close, but they don't want full transparency. Why? Because full transparency requires honesty, and honesty can disrupt control. Sometimes it's innocent. Maybe she has trauma. Maybe she values digital boundaries. Maybe she just doesn't want to feel monitored. And all of those are valid if they're communicated with respect. But if you've been together for a while and she still acts like letting you see a WhatsApp notification is equivalent to giving away nuclear codes, that's not boundaries. That's fear of being found out. So what do? You don't snoop, you don't demand passwords, you don't start fights. You express. You say, hey, I notice you're really protective of your phone, and sometimes it makes me wonder what you're keeping from me. I want to trust you fully, but I also want to feel like we're in a relationship where transparency is mutual. If she cares, she'll understand. She'll offer clarity. She may even open up about why she acts that way, and it might have nothing to do with you. But if she gaslights you, if she turns it into a blame game, why don't you trust me, or you're being controlling, that's a signal. Because gaslighting is what people do when they don't want to answer an honest question. Stoicism teaches us to protect our peace, not by controlling others, but by recognizing what we can't control and stepping away when clarity is denied. You shouldn't have to live with doubt. You shouldn't have to wonder every time she steps out of the room. And you shouldn't feel like you're intruding for simply noticing something feels wrong. Trust isn't just about loyalty, it's about emotional safety. And if her digital behavior keeps triggering anxiety in you, it's not about the phone. It's about the gap between what she shows you and what you feel in your gut. At the end of the day, you don't need constant access to someone's messages. But you do need to know that what they do in your absence honors what they say in your presence. And if that's missing, if the secrecy grows while the intimacy shrinks, you have a decision to make. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Because a healthy relationship doesn't make you feel like an outsider in your own story. Sign #7. She avoids conversations about sexual health. Sex is easy to talk about when it's playful. Flirting fantasies, preferences, those conversations come naturally. But the moment the topic shifts to responsibility, to protection, boundaries, and sexual health, some people go silent. You bring up using protection, and she waves it off. You ask about getting tested, and she laughs. You mention birth control, and she suddenly seems uncomfortable or distracted. At first you think maybe she's just shy. Maybe it's too early. Maybe she wasn't expecting the conversation to go that deep. But weeks pass. The intimacy continues, and the silence lingers. Now, it's not just shyness, it's avoidance, and that avoidance should concern you. Because a partner who is unwilling or even hostile toward open, responsible conversations about sexual health is revealing more than just discomfort. They're revealing their relationship with accountability. Let's be real, we live in a time where sexual history is diverse. People explore, they experiment, they move through relationships quickly, and that's not inherently bad. But with experience comes responsibility, and responsibility means this. If you've had multiple partners, you must be willing to talk about what that means for your body, your safety, and your future partner's peace of mind. When someone shuts down these conversations, they might be hiding discomfort, embarrassment, or even fear of judgment. That's understandable. But when they consistently refuse to engage, even when approached gently, that's not just emotional immaturity, that's a red flag. Because here's what happens next. You'll be the one always bringing it up. You'll be the one insisting on protection. You'll be the one questioning if she's being honest about her history. And slowly, you'll start feeling like the bad guy for simply caring about your health. That's not love. That's manipulation through avoidance. There's a deeper issue beneath this dynamic. It's about shame. Some people carry so much shame about their past that they'd rather pretend it doesn't exist. They'd rather hope you never ask questions. They'd rather risk your health than face their own truth. But intimacy without honesty is dangerous. It creates false trust. It builds connection on half-truths, and eventually it breaks. Let's be even more specific. If she avoids talking about testing, if she deflects when asked about past partners, if she resists conversations about contraception, if she calls you too serious or too paranoid, then you need to step back, not to punish her, but to protect yourself. Because your peace of mind is not negotiable. Your health is not something to be dismissed. In a mature relationship, sexual conversations are not optional, they're essential. They build trust, they create clarity, and they ensure that both people feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally. Let's talk Stoicism for a moment. The Stoics believed that we should live according to nature, which includes reason, virtue, and responsibility. A Stoic man does not avoid uncomfortable truths. He meets them head-on, calmly and clearly. If your partner refuses to meet you in that space, to talk, to clarify, to ensure safety, then ask yourself, what kind of future can you build with someone who won't even face the present? You don't need someone with a perfect history. You need someone with honest intentions. Someone who may have made mistakes, but owns them. Someone who values your well-being as much as her own. Someone who knows that intimacy means more than touch, it means transparency. So what do? You bring it up once more, calmly, directly. You say, I value our connection, but I also value clarity. I need to know we're on the same page when it comes to sexual health. This isn't about judgment, it's about mutual care. Then you watch how she responds. Not just the words, but the energy. Does she listen or does she deflect? Does she respond with openness or with guilt-tripping? If she leans in, you have something to work with. If she pulls away and keeps pulling away, then believe her. Avoiding this topic might feel easier in the short term, but it always costs more later. So choose clarity. Choose your safety. Choose emotional adulthood. Because no amount of passion is worth your peace of mind. Sign #8. She avoids integrating you into her social circle. There's a moment in every growing relationship when one partner says, you should meet my friends. It's not always a big event. Sometimes it's just grabbing drinks or tagging along at a group dinner. But it matters because it signals something deeper. It says, you're part of my world now. So when weeks turn into months and you're still not being introduced, when every plan to meet her friends is not the right time or too complicated or they're just not around right now, you have to wonder what's really going on. Avoiding social integration is one of the most overlooked red flags in early relationships. It's subtle, it can be easily justified, but it often points to something serious, a lack of emotional commitment or a fear of exposure. Let's break it down. There are many reasons why someone might not introduce you to their friends right away. Maybe they're private. Maybe they've had bad experiences in the past. Maybe they want to be sure the relationship is real before they bring others into it. That's all fair. But if you've been seeing each other for a while, sharing intimacy, spending weekends together, having serious conversations, and she still keeps you separate from her inner circle, you have to ask, what part of me is she hiding? Or perhaps the better question is, what part of herself is she afraid I'll see once I meet the people who really know her? Because friends reveal truth. They tell stories, they show dynamics, they offer context about who a person is beyond the curated version you see on dates. And if she's trying to control your perception of her, the last thing she'll want is for you to interact with people who can fill in the blanks. There's also another layer here, identity management. When someone has lived a life filled with short-term flings, non-committal situationships, or emotionally distant entanglements, they often compartmentalize. They present one version of themselves to you, polished, intentional, romantic. But around their friends, the truth slips out. And maybe that truth doesn't align with the image she's trying to create. So instead of risking that collision, she keeps you separate. She stalls, she avoids. She makes it seem normal, but it's not. Because if you're building something real, your lives should begin to intertwine. That doesn't mean meeting all her friends at once, but it does mean there's movement, progress, integration. The absence of that, especially when you bring it up and get excuses, is communication, not with words, with action. And the message is, you're still temporary. I don't know if I want you in that part of my life yet. Now how should you respond? You don't demand, you don't accuse, you express. You say something like, I've noticed I haven't met any of your close friends yet, and that makes me feel like there's a wall between us. I'd like to be part of your world, not just an experience you keep separate. Then you watch what happens. Does she listen? Does she make an effort? Or does she shut down, redirect, say it's not a big deal? Or you're being too intense? Her response reveals her readiness. Relationships aren't just about what happens between two people. They're also about how those two people are willing to show up together in the world. And if she's unwilling to let the world see you by her side, if she's unwilling to let you see her in her unfiltered context, that's not privacy, that's avoidance. A Stoic man doesn't panic. He doesn't chase validation. He watches. He discerns. And when clarity is absent, he steps away, not in anger, but in alignment with his peace. You are not meant to live in the shadows of someone else's life. You are not meant to be a secret. You are not meant to be compartmentalized. If she's not ready to introduce you to her people, she's not ready for a relationship, she's still managing appearances. And the sooner you recognize that, the sooner you free yourself to find someone who's proud to claim you. Not someday, but today. Sign #9. You feel like an afterthought, not a priority. You're available. You show up. You initiate. You plan. You care. And in return, you wait. You wait for texts, for confirmation, for commitment, for any signal that she values your presence as much as you value hers. But instead you get delays, excuses, reschedules, silence, and over time that sinking feeling begins to settle in. You're not her priority. You're just there. Sometimes included, sometimes forgotten, always secondary. Let's be honest. No one wants to admit they're being treated as an option, but the body knows before the brain does. You feel it in the way she responds, in how quickly or slowly she gets back to you, in how plans with you are flexible, but her commitments to others are fixed. And here's the truth. When a woman wants you in her life, she creates space, not confusion. She doesn't make you chase her time. She invites you into it. She doesn't wait until she's bored to reach out. She reaches because she cares. But when she doesn't, you start adjusting. You start overthinking. You start shrinking your needs so they fit into her convenience. That's not love, that's emotional survival. And often this dynamic appears in women who are still carrying unresolved relationship patterns, or who have grown used to attention without reciprocity. Maybe she's used to being pursued but never had to invest back. Maybe she's gone from one casual relationship to another, never practicing commitment. Maybe she's emotionally detached, still figuring herself out, and you're just a placeholder while she does. Either way, the result is the same. You feel unseen, unheard, unchosen, and yet you stay. Why? Because she gives just enough. A sweet message here. A spontaneous night out there, just enough warmth to keep your hope alive, but never enough consistency to build something real. This is what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive kind of attention. It keeps you locked in waiting for the next hit of affection, and the longer you stay, the more you normalize neglect. You start telling yourself stories. She's just busy. She's going through something. She'll change once she sees how loyal I am. But deep down you know this isn't what you want. This isn't how love feels. So what does a man of self-respect do? He steps back. He observes the pattern, not the potential. He doesn't get seduced by her good days if her bad days are the norm. He asks one simple question. Does her effort match mine? And if the answer is no, he doesn't beg. He doesn't plead. He doesn't try harder. He simply leaves the table where he is no longer being fed. Because being someone's occasional interest is far more painful than being alone. There's a quote from Marcus Aurelius that says, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In relationships, that means this: don't spend your days wondering if someone else will rise to your level. You rise, and if they don't meet you there, you walk. Love without effort is just convenience, and you are not here to be convenient. You are not a backup plan. You are not a maybe later. You are not someone to be squeezed into the gaps of someone else's schedule. You are meant to be chosen, fully, freely, enthusiastically. And if she can't offer that, release her. Not because you hate her, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop settling for being second place in a race you didn't sign up for. Sign #10, you're shut out from her emotional core. You're there. Physically, practically, emotionally. You listen. You care. You support. And yet you feel like a guest in her inner world. Not a partner, not an anchor, just someone passing through. She tells you about her day, but never her doubts. She tells you what happened, but not how it made her feel. She opens the door just wide enough for small talk, but never wide enough for real connection. And over time you begin to realize you are not in her emotional world. You're orbiting it. There's a wall. You can't see it, but you can feel it. Every time you get close, she shifts. Every time you ask something deeper, she deflects. Every time you offer a moment of vulnerability, she responds with distance or silence. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's always there. This is one of the most painful dynamics a man can experience, because you're trying, you're showing up, you're opening your heart. But it's like pouring water into a sealed jar. Nothing goes through, and the worst part, she still keeps you around. She still smiles, still touches you, still makes you feel like maybe, just maybe, if you stay long enough, she'll let you in. But she doesn't. Because she can't or won't. Some people live behind emotional walls for so long they no longer know how to open them. They've been hurt, abandoned, betrayed, so they decided never again. And that decision became their personality. Now they survive through charm, through control, through keeping everyone at just enough distance to never get hurt again, even if it means never being loved again. If you've sensed this, that quiet refusal to be seen, then you've probably already felt the slow erosion of your own self-worth. Because the more someone withholds from you, the more you begin to question your value. Why won't she trust me? Am I not safe enough? What am I doing wrong? But you're not doing anything wrong. You're just trying to love someone who has barricaded themselves inside. And the Stoic truth is this: you cannot save someone who doesn't want to be reached. You cannot love someone into wholeness if they've committed to hiding. A relationship is not just about time spent, it's about truth shared. If you're always revealing and she is always retreating, that is not intimacy. That is emotional starvation. So what do? You stop knocking. You express your truth once clearly, calmly. I want to know the real you. Not just the version that smiles when things are easy. I want to build something honest, and I can't do that if I'm the only one being open. Then you step back and observe. Does she lean in? Does she soften? Or does she shut tighter? Because her reaction will tell you more than any words ever could. You deserve connection, not just contact. You deserve to be let in, not left out. You deserve a relationship where both people show up fully. And if she can't or won't, you let her go. Not to punish her, but to free yourself. Because the hardest truth to accept is this: sometimes you can love someone who isn't emotionally available, and that love will go nowhere. Not because it wasn't real, but because it wasn't received. So let her keep her walls if she chooses. But don't stay outside them hoping they'll collapse. You have your own inner world to protect. And that world needs light, honesty, and mutual presence, not mystery and silence. Choose the woman who lets you in, and release the one who only lets you hope. You made it through all 10 signs, and maybe along the way one of them hit too close to home. Maybe several did. Maybe you've been in that exact situation where your heart was all in, but the other person was never really there. That kind of realization can hurt, but it can also wake you up. Because awareness, not love, is what protects your peace. We live in a world that glamorizes connection. That tells you to fight for love, be understanding, stay patient. And yes, love requires effort. Understanding matters. Patience has its place. But so does discernment, so does protecting your energy, so does choosing you. You are not here to fix anyone. You are not here to prove yourself worthy of being loved. You are not here to beg for time, affection, or emotional availability. You are here to share your life fully, clearly, fearlessly with someone who can meet you. Not someone who avoids you, not someone who compares you, not someone who touches you but never sees you. Someone who chooses you not when it's easy but especially when it's hard. Someone who brings down their walls slowly but surely because they want to be known by you. That's what a real relationship is. Not perfection, but mutual effort. Not instant chemistry, but growing trust. So if you've recognized these signs in someone you're dating now or someone you're still holding on to in memory, ask yourself, am I being loved or am I just filling a space? Do I feel expanded in this relationship or smaller? Does my heart feel safe here or just busy trying not to break? The answers to those questions are not always easy, but they are always honest. And that honesty, that's your freedom. Walk with it. Because when you finally stop chasing emotional crumbs, you create space for a partner who offers you the whole meal. No confusion, no silence, no games, just truth, presence, and peace. And you deserve nothing less.